Yes, as you have seen the video, this lovely gentleman is actually sitting to my left. This is Alex. Alex is actually the winner of the HarperCollins competition this year to actually find the most multilingual student in the UK. He's a third-year undergraduate student at Oxford University, and his languages, let me count them again: German, French, Russian, Greek, Dutch, Spanish, Afrikaans, Hebrew, Italian, Catalan, Mandarin, and most recently he started to study Yiddish, if I'm right. And on my left, next to Alex, actually sits Slyvia. Slyvia is in charge of languages and integration issues at the Goethe Institute in Munich. Slyvia actually lived and worked in Hong Kong previously, and also in Madagascar. Her academic background is actually theatre studies, which comes in very handy here, and economy. And Slyvia speaks German, French, Italian, and English. And Slyvia and her department at the Goethe Institute actually organized a competition called Mehrsprachig to find the most multilingual, or the person that can promote multilingualism the best way, and they actually found Richard. And Richard is sitting to my right. Richard is actually probably the most proficient multilingualist in the UK, so it's a big honor to have him on our panel today. And Richard holds a PA in Combined Languages from the University of Hull in England. And I tried to write down all the languages that he speaks on this little card, and it didn't really quite fit, but I'm going to try to list them for you. So, it's English, French, Spanish, Italian, Portuguese, Catalan, German, Dutch, Swedish, Danish, Czech, Polish, Serbian, Croatian, Macedonian, Russian, Welsh, I'm not finished, Esperanto, Albanian, Turkish, and Bulgarian. And I think you're so much. And we have today actually a surprise guest on our panel. The person is not in the agenda today, and I'm very glad and happy that he actually managed to come and be with us today. His name is Luca Lampariello, and it's actually Richard who will introduce you to him.
Okay. Thank you very much for that lovely introduction. Luca is a friend of mine that I met after making a video on YouTube 4 years ago, and I reached out to the language learning community to try and find like-minded people and to also encourage other people to learn foreign languages. I did that because when I was growing up, I didn't have anybody really that I could look to who'd been through the whole process of learning multiple languages. And I was fortunate enough to find Luca Lampariello through YouTube. We started to speak, and I quickly found that he was more than able to converse in 10 languages with me. In common we have English, obviously, French, Spanish, Italian, Portuguese, German, Dutch, Swedish, Russian, I'm missing something. Not Chinese, I wouldn't say and he also speaks Chinese and Japanese on top of that as well. He's also been learning Romanian too. And now he's learning Polish, so we've got a new one for Polish.
So actually my first question to start off with actually goes to our multilingualists here in the panel. And I was always wondering what actually makes someone be a multilingualist. Is there a language that actually kicked off the interest to learn other languages? Was there sort of gateway languages that led to the learning of more languages? Maybe Alex, you would like to say something about that?
Well, of course, on the most basic level, what makes someone multilingual is someone who speaks a lot of languages. And the way that you speak a lot of languages is you learn them. And the reason why you learn them is because you want to, is because you have reasons to learn these languages, because you want to travel, because you have friends who live abroad, because you want to live abroad, because you're interested in other cultures. My own story, of course, is very related to this. I grew up in the UK. I grew up in London, which is one of the most multilingual cities in the world today. Growing up, there probably wasn't a single day that I didn't hear at least 2, maybe 3 languages being spoken on public transportation, in parks, in the street, even in my own school. My mother is half Greek, as it says in the video, and she used to speak Greek to me, so Greek for me is less like a language that I've learnt and more like a language which is mine. However, I started travelling when I was younger. I went to Holland with my parents and heard Dutch for the first time, which really sparked a real fascination for languages in general. And I decided, based on having heard Dutch, that I wanted to learn it. And I wanted to know more about Holland. And from there, I've gone forward to learn other languages. I moved on to Afrikaans. I studied Spanish before visiting Cuba, and then my school allowed me to study it at school to GCSE and A-level, which is the UK school system. And then most recently Russian I've started learning at university, because unfortunately my school did not offer it, but there was an opportunity for me to do that, and then that has taken me to many wonderful places across the world. I have lived in Russia. I've also managed to travel in countries which I barely knew existed as a result, such as Georgia and Armenia, the Caucasus, and places where Russian is very much the lingua franca. And yeah, I'm very much to carry on.
And Luca, I know that actually you have a very interesting background, because you didn't study languages at school or university, really. Your background is actually very different.
Yeah. Good morning, everybody. Yes, I'm an engineer, actually, but I've developed this big passion for languages. Actually, what happened is that when I was 12, in my family, they were constantly talking about languages. And I do remember the painful sessions of Latin that my grandmother was giving me during the summer, but it was great, and I have to thank her, because it spawned this language monster in me. And then I started to learn, my first language was English. And then I worked as an engineer, but I found out that my real passion is languages, not just languages, because languages are vectors of communication. So I just found out that I love different cultures. As Alex was saying, languages, if you speak a lot of languages, you can actually enjoy life in all its aspects. I always say, I like the quote, that if you learn another language, you acquire another soul. And that is true, because you have different personalities in yourself, like living together in the same body. And it's an exhilarating feeling to be able not only to enjoy all the things in life, but also to feel different and to feel better. This at least has been my experience. It's an incredibly enriching experience.
And Richard, actually, as you speak so many languages, do you think there's a limit when at one point you say, my brain is going to explode, that's it, I can't take it anymore? It's like, or do you have like a thing where you say, you know, I'll stop when I'm at 50 languages or 100?
My issue as a child was always that people didn't have this experience growing up in the United Kingdom. I grew up on the English-Welsh border, so I was always hearing Welsh and English and listening to those languages, and then also having family from Thailand. I had Thai influence and French at a young age too. And so for me it was kind of normal, and I play with accents a lot. So I used to try and imitate all the accents of my country, and then I went abroad too, and then try and play with the accents in other languages. So speak French with a German accent, or speak German with a Finnish accent or something like that. And do I think there's a limit? Not really. I think that the only limit you put on yourself is what you decide yourself. You can just try and go for what you can, and always compete with yourself to better yourself. That's my philosophy, really. I've never listened to anybody who said to me, you're going to go crazy, confuse all the languages, or or you're just going to end up with some sort of mental disorder. And believe me, I was told lots of things along these lines growing up, but I never listened, and I just sort of carried on, and now we've got to a stage where the community is really gelling together and getting to meet lots of people with similar experiences.
Because also your daughter actually grows up with, what, 5 languages? She's how old is she?
My daughter's 5 years old, and she, when she was born in the United Kingdom, and I spoke to her in French from birth and English. When she got to 1.5 years old, I switched to just French at home because she had English outside the house. And my wife and I use Macedonian as our home language, and she speaks Macedonian to her mum. So she had 3 birth languages, and then when she got to 16 months, we were kind of expecting her to not speak until she was 3 years old. The thought on multilingual children is that they could possibly not speak any language until they're 3. So we really had that in our minds, we've done all the research, and we were expecting her to speak later. In fact, she spoke before her first birthday, and by 16 months she was putting 3 words together in all 3 languages. So
she's truly the daughter of father issue. Well, it seems to be a genetic maybe,
well,
but not just, maybe also there's also the parents, the more the parents are willing actually to teach and to let the children.
I think the more you put on a child, they can adapt. And so when she got to 16 months old, I listened to some new research from America about playing with a child for an hour, half an hour a day in a language so they have an extra language. So we started doing that with German and Spanish. So I would take her out of the house to a different location so that she would associate that location with German and Spanish. And now at 5 years old, I can speak to her fluently in German and Spanish, as well as French and English, and she's completely fine. She'll even respond to a lesser degree than her first languages, but she can respond. And this year she's just started learning Mandarin. Because she wanted to. She asked for it for 2 years.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, there are also people that do actually say and research that tries to suggest that actually too many languages can also be difficult or have a negative impact. And I was wondering actually if you guys had, what do you think about, are there any counter arguments to multilingualism? Because some people say it takes too much time, you mess up with your head, you won't be able to speak one language properly, money maybe, it costs a lot of money. What do you think?
Well, if I just pick up on this idea that speaking many languages messes with your head, this is one of those things which people throw at you quite a lot, and I cannot disagree with it more. As Luca was already saying, every language that you learn allows you to see the world in a different way. You start to see different things, you notice different things, you concentrate on different aspects. And whether that is messing up your head or not, I completely disagree. It simply just opens your eyes. To also draw back maybe a little bit onto the previous discussion of this morning about learning languages being a form of oppression. Of course it's true. You are suddenly trying to find yourself channeling your thoughts. Unfortunately the word which I want to use only exists to my knowledge in Greek, which is nootropia, which is the way in which you think. Your thinking process, of course, is adapted to whichever language you are learning. Each language equips you with different concepts and different cultural nuances. So of course in that way it's oppressive, but what you can then go on to do once you've learned those languages is far from oppressive. It's in fact empowering. And the state of being able to speak languages, learning them, is one of the most empowering things that I've ever done. It's opened far more doors to me than if I'd never started. And so are there counter-arguments to multilingualism? I'd love to hear them.
Sylvia, do you have any counter-arguments?
No, I don't have counter-arguments, but I was thinking about, because we have here people of very, very much languages, and I thought about something when you saw, when you asked what was the kickoff language. Well, I learned back in Germany, I learned English and French at school, and well, I was not bad and I was not good, and I was not very interested in languages. It was quite nice. Sometimes it was good lessons, sometimes it was bad lessons. Some teachers was good, some teachers was bad. I would never have thought that I will end up in speaking any language as comfortably as my own language. Then I, like life is playing, I came to Italy, like a lot of German girls, for a love story, and I learned from, I never studied Italian, and I came into an environment of nobody ever talked in English with me, so I was forced to speak Italian or to learn Italian, and after 4 months of nearly saying nothing, I started to speak it quite easily. And this was maybe my kick-off language, because for the first time I understood that language learning is not a matter of being very talented. It has something to do with motivation and with the situation, of course. And then if you want to learn it, then you learn it. And the question is more, am I interested? Am I interested in communicating? Am I interested in learning something about the people around me? Because of course I can also switch in some way to English, but then it is not that I'm learning something. And in the moment I'm interested in, and that's more or less what Alex also said, he was interested in understanding something about the other people. So he wanted not only to know the culture and literature and read it in translation, he really wanted to know also something about the language. Because this is a very exciting experience when you find out that language is not translation. Language is a concept, and knowing another language means you know another concept. We talked about it this morning also, that when you start to use another language, maybe you also start in some kind to think in another way, to think another concept. There are words, there are expressions which you cannot translate in other languages, or which you would never think in another language. And this makes it then you understand that you are learning something about yourself, because you start to think other thoughts. And I will make it short, but only one little anecdote. When I went back the first time with my then fidanzato in Germania, he was completely confused, because he said, listen, when you are in Germany, you're a completely different person. You are speaking different, you are moving different, you are really different. And for me it was, I said, what are you saying? But it was true, it is definitely true. And since then I observed this fact, and I see that in French, I see that in other environments. I stayed in a lot of places, and it is true. You change, of course, with the culture you are living in, but also with the language you are living in. And this makes things very, very exciting for me.
And I think there are also two ways of learning the language. I mean, I spoke to Alex this morning, and he told me about that his favorite way of learning language is actually what he calls over the kitchen table. So that's not really in a classroom, as for example, the Goethe Institute or other institutes are actually providing language classes. I don't know, Richard, how you see it. How is it the kitchen table method you use, or is it? Do you think it's better to go actually do a course, pay the bill, and?
You have to find what works best for you as an individual, and not believe in a one solution that fits all. We're all different, and we all have different ways of learning and remembering information, and we all need different prompts. For some people, a formal course will work really well, for others it won't. To my mind, it's getting over the mental barrier of, I don't know how to say it, it's not going to be right, and sort of getting over our thoughts that when we're going to make mistakes, and getting over these sort of problems of, okay, is it really that bad to make a mistake? If it isn't, and you know that it's not the end of the world, that's the main barrier, I think. So whether you go to a course or whether you learn it, in a home environment, I've done a mixture of the two. At the moment I'm doing a Turkish course in a formal way. I've just started my B2 level Turkish finishing my B1 exam next week, and it's been fantastic. I've learned an awful lot of Turkish. Macedonian I taught myself, and then I learned by speaking to my wife. And again, I learned it equally quickly. German was the same thing for me. I went to live in a family in Germany for 3 months, and then I had to sit an exam to prove that I had a university level German to be able to study in Spain, and it worked well. So
what actually that brings you to the point, what new technology, especially with all the young people over there, what do you think, Luca, how can new technologies actually play a role in language learning?
Well, it's already playing a huge role right now. I think that in some way people are not aware of how powerful the internet is. Actually, right now we can do pretty much everything with a computer. It's like a radio, you can talk to a person. And before, like in 20 years, I still remember, you know, the cassettes that you're using, you can find everything on the internet. The problem is that a lot of people don't know how to use this properly. That's the problem. There's a wealth of material and the resources, and I think that we should emphasize, you know, the methodology. People should learn how to learn. That's the problem. If you have a lot of things at your disposal, but you don't know what to make of them, then it can be a big problem. But I think that things are changing. You know, the internet is a very recent invention. It's been around for 20 years. So just recently, people have started, you know, using the internet. The problem is that, for example, in schools, I personally think that things should change within the school system as well. For example, somebody may think that YouTube is not, you know, a good instrument, but I would introduce YouTube in schools and teach how to use YouTube, because the problem is that if you watch, you spend the whole day on YouTube doing nothing, then it's useless. But if you know how to use YouTube for language learning, then it can be a wonderful instrument. So things are changing, and then you have Skype, and still Skype is another instrument, but you have to know how to use it. So I'm emphasizing the way we should actually learn how to learn.
Do you think new technologies or any other way of learning languages can actually substitute a proper language class or a language teacher?
Well, going back to the language class, the problem is that I think that my favorite quote is that languages can be learned. They cannot be taught. They can only be learned. So the problem is, like Richard, for example, he's attending classes in Turkish, but I think that the reason for his big success in language learning is that what he does outside of the class, not only in the class, but outside of it. He spends a lot of mental time constantly thinking about Turkish and doing things in his own place, and that changes a lot. The problem is in the school system, students expect the teacher to teach them the language. So they say, oh, I want to learn this language, but in reality they're not motivated, and they should do things. That's the main problem. So they say, oh, he's a good teacher, but the real problem is about learning the language, learning how to learn yourself. This is going to change things dramatically, I think.
Maybe as a language teacher, I can only say that I really like that language cannot be taught, it can only be learned. And I think here the new technologies are really essential, because with the new technologies you have a lot more possibilities to use the language. You can do your own YouTube video in a language you know very, very little. You can put together things, you can make it funny or whatsoever. You can speak it, you can take it seriously or not so seriously. You can play with it. You can read newspapers, you can meet people in the world. You do not need necessarily to go to another place, to go to the country. Of course, after you learn the language or you have an idea of the language, I would very much hope that you want to go there to see it. But you do not need necessarily this. You do not need to wait for the hour in the school that the teacher comes and tell you what you have to do. You can do that at whatever time you want to do it. You have the iPad, you have the iPhone, you can see the things, you have Skype, and you can get in contact, and of course Facebook. And you can get in contact with people, and it's no more something like math that you learn a formula and to resolve a problem. You use it to get in contact with people, to know what other people think, or to try out nice things. And I think here, what we as instructors or teachers can do, we can give ideas, we can manage the scene, we can manage the learning environment and ask you to do a YouTube video, but it is not so much the giving advice on the learning, because everybody of you is different in learning. Someone learns better at the kitchen table or by hearing, and another one needs structures. So this is, I think, what a teacher's work is, to give different possibilities of approach. But the learning, exactly like you said, learning can only be done by the one who wants to learn the language.
I have here something. It's actually a recent study published by The Guardian very recently, that indicated that just 38% of 14-year-old public school students in the UK were learning a second language. And in comparison, 99% of 14-year-old private schools in the UK learned at least one foreign language, and all had the ability to take classes in French and in German. My question is actually, do you think that multilingualism is something preserved for the elites? Is it something that those can afford, that you can go and have access to internet, have access to special classes and teachers that are actually good?
To a degree, it would be naive of me to say no. In an ideal world, we talk about the internet and freedom of information on the web, where everyone's got access to the same resources. In reality, the education is somewhat lacking, and that can be due to socio-economic situations within a country. In countries like the United Kingdom, Italy, where we are now, Germany, Spain, for example, they tend to be countries with a very strong language and a very strong tradition in dubbing things into the country's language to try and have a major language. You find in smaller countries like the Netherlands, or even Scandinavia, people tend to speak English, for example, extremely well. Why do they do that? Is it because that they can afford things, are they all rich? No. The reason they do it is because there is a national awareness that they need more than just their language to be able to cross borders. Because if you just speak Danish outside of Denmark and maybe Sweden and Norway, but they also understand you, you're not going to go very far and you want to go and travel, study abroad. And any person I've ever spoken from those countries has always used those arguments about English. Of course they speak English, and then maybe they learn another language on top of that. So I think that plays a big role, not just the socio-economic argument, but also the national mentality and the thoughts of sort of language. In England, then, you never stop hearing people saying, why learn a foreign language? Everyone speaks English. I met many people that even went to university to study languages in the United Kingdom. They went on the year abroad, and what did they do? They met with the Australians, the Americans, the Canadians, and they all got together, the Irish as well, got together and just spoke English together. And if they went to speak to one of the people from the country of the language they're learning, they had a marked Anglophone accent. And what would happen? Oh, you're from England, it's great, we can speak in English and I can practice my English. And that happens quite a lot. Unless a person is extremely strong in their convictions for learning languages, they find it quite difficult to rebuke that and say, okay, all it takes, in fact, is I really appreciate you making the effort to speak my language, but I really love your language and culture. For that reason I want to speak it, and I really appreciate it if you could help to improve my ability in your language by speaking it with me.
So what do you think? So if it's actually down to each other, like the person's interest in actually learning the language, if that's the real trigger, what do you think do people need to get interested in languages?
It's about awareness, it's about motivation. The problem is that you can learn a language for free now, totally for free. Well, I shouldn't say this, but you can download everything. I mean, if you really wanted to, you could literally learn a language for free. So this is not a problem of the elite. This is a problem of the elite in the consciousness. And I'm not talking about individuals. I'm talking about countries here. For example, in the Netherlands, they have a different conception. We always wonder, we Italians, in France as well, in Spain, we don't speak languages. We have some kind of complex, I don't know. We don't speak languages as well as in other countries. And the problem is that it's a different awareness. They, for example, they don't dub movies. They do dub movies in Dutch, in their native tongues. They watch television in English, and they have a better school system, a system that emphasizes language learning much more than we do here in Italy. So this is a problem of awareness in general, much more than money.
I don't know, Slyvia, maybe you have an idea, maybe what should actually governments and institutions do to raise interest in language learning?
Well, I think for language learning you need curiosity and joy. You need to have some fun with language learning, because if it is only like it is often in schools, if it is only to get good marks, then there is no way to incite on a climate of language awareness or I don't know, that you want really to learn it. So I think there is really to do something on a very bottom-up level to start with projects, language projects which go over the borders, that you do things to talk to other people, to produce something together, to instead of writing all these tests and whatsoever, to go out in the internet and to make things together with people from European countries or from other countries, to see that we are all struggling with the same wish, that we want to know another language, and we have to put in some time and interest. But then we can do that, and we do it together with the others. I think this is one moment when you develop curiosity and you develop also satisfaction that you are doing something. You have something you can see, not a school schedule, not a school test which is for no one, but something for yourself, what you can be proud about. I think this is really a way to enhance this idea of languages, of different cultures, of curiosity.
Actually, we are running a bit short of time, so I would actually like, before I go to the last question, ask if there are any questions from the public to our panelists. So if you could then just raise your hand. I think there's somebody with a microphone to help, and just also mention to whom you're directing the questions, which one of the panelists. I think there's a Oh, and let's try to speak in you don't need to ask the question in English necessarily. We'll try to cover whatever language you want to speak. I think we
Ja, nu is het te laat, dus van mijn vraag, is aan 3, de multilingualisten. I'll translate. So, it was a bit too late because the microphone was not on, and but maybe you already heard the 2 Dutch words that I mentioned. So I tried in Dutch because I have a question as a linguist. Then when a language comes, does it take you longer to be able to understand a particular language when you don't know in advance which language is coming? Is there a particular, for reception, is there a particular preferential language? What gears you towards a particular language, and how easily can you yourself switch in talking to other languages?
If you would like to answer that one.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, I pick up languages. It really depends. Every language has its own story. So it's not that I wake up in the morning and I say I'm going to learn Turkish. It's just that some things happen in my life, and then maybe I meet an interesting person, or I watch a movie, I see something interesting about that culture, and then I decide to learn a given language. So it's really, for every language, there's a different story. Going back to what you were saying about switching in languages, the problem of switching languages is that it really depends on the people you're talking to. For example, if I'm speaking to my friend, if we have like 10 people here, and I have 10 people from 10 different nationalities, if I talk to that person, like for example my friend, and I identify him as, for example, from Spain, I can speak Spanish, and then I can switch to another language. So switching languages is not a problem, as far as I don't have to switch with the same person. Now, Richard, I've been speaking with Richard like for more than 4 years right now on Skype, and that he is the only person I switch a lot of languages with Richard because I know that he's a polyglot, and normally I could get confused in a situation where the same person talks to me in Spanish, another person talks to me in, I don't know, German at the same time at a table. But switching languages, I think that switching languages is not a problem. When you reach a certain level in a language and you make it yours, I don't think that switching languages is a big issue. So that's my...
Let's just take, can we just quickly take, because we really should, maybe one or two more questions?
Buongiorno, parlo italiano, spero di essere comunque capita sicuramente. Niente, io sono un insegnante della scuola superiore italiana qua di Parma e volevo appunto sapere, secondo voi, quindi il ruolo dell'insegnante di lingue, se è un ruolo in qualche modo centrale, deve accompagnare il ragazzo deve sicuramente avere una motivazione, cogliere l'importanza appunto della lingua non solo come credo mezzo di pura comunicazione così, ma anche come mezzo per cogliere appunto la cultura, l'anima in qualche modo di un popolo. Però volevo sapere le strategie, al di là dell'essere personali, del apprendimento della lingua, il ruolo dell'insegnante secondo voi, al di là di usare tutti i media, tutte le cose, YouTube, tutte le possibilità che oggi abbiamo, peraltro importantissime, però volevo sapere come anche voi che avete vissuto delle altre realtà scolastiche, qual è insomma diciamo il ruolo dell'insegnante, come l'insegnante può contribuire diciamo in modo positivo all'apprendimento, all'insegnamento della lingua.
Posso rispondere io un'altra volta?
Lasciamo magari soltanto un attimino.
Prego.
Rispondere a Alex
e poi... so I mean the role of the teacher, the role of the educator in learning languages. I had a variety of experiences with my language teachers. Some were extremely inspirational, some were not. And I think that the role they play is incredibly important, especially for school children whose experiences of learning languages often can be restricted to the classroom. You do need to have a teacher that will remind you about the reasons why you've decided to learn a language, about the experiences that are then going to be available to you as a result of making that step. My German teacher, for example, was quite young when I was at school. He had recently finished university, he'd studied the same course that I'm studying now, and I think that the influence that he had on me was absolutely enormous in terms of the decisions that I've made and the way my life is now going. Equally, when I was at primary school, I started learning French at the age of about 8, and I had a French teacher who was not very open about this, but secretly he spoke 5 languages. And I was absolutely amazed by this. I was absolutely in awe of the fact that not only was he there teaching his French, his native English, he also could speak German, Spanish and Italian, and he used to sit on the games coach as we went to the sports field with his Spanish books, and I would pass it and sort of be in awe. So yeah, I mean, this is the role of the teacher. You have to keep it relevant and you have to keep it exciting. And you have to try, I guess, as much as possible to remind the children that the language is not just the verb tables, it's not just the subjunctive, it's the fun side as well.
La mia modesta opinione, il problema è che diciamo, l'insegnante dovrebbe essere il satellite e lo studente dovrebbe essere il pianeta e non il contrario. Il problema è che quando l'insegnante, diciamo, è un sistema insegnantocentrico, nel senso che l'insegnante è lì e quindi è lui che conduce, no? È lui che conduce l'insegnamento, quindi gli studenti tendono a pensare che sia lui o lei a dover impartire e a dover insegnare la lingua. Quindi secondo me la prima cosa che bisognerebbe fare è cambiare la prospettiva. Cambiare la prospettiva significa che sono gli studenti ad essere i protagonisti ad essere i protagonisti in generale. E questo è fondamentale, e se questa prospettiva, se si riesce a ribaltare questa prospettiva, cambia tutto il sistema dell'insegnamento, nel senso che, per esempio, dalla mia esperienza, io adesso lavoro come language coach, che non è la stessa cosa di insegnante di lingue, cioè secondo me l'insegnante dovrebbe essere una guida e, come diceva Alex, ispirare la persona, dire sempre questa è la ragione per cui stai imparando la lingua, questa e quest'altra, e poi cambiare anche il sistema, il modo in cui vengono insegnate le lingue, nel senso che se io avessi capacità decisionali sul sistema in generale cambierei completamente tutto. Uno dei motivi per cui le lingue non si imparano a scuola non è solo una questione di metodologia, ma anche una questione di contenuti, nel senso che molto spesso si danno dei contenuti, come si dice a Roma, di cui agli studenti non gliene può fregare di meno, e quindi hanno la tendenza a non voler imparare, mentre invece se sono loro i protagonisti e sono loro a scegliere cosa vogliono imparare, le cose cambiano radicalmente. Per esempio, se a uno studente piace la musica, proporgli un testo sulla musica lo motiverà molto di più a imparare la lingua, perché vorrà capire il messaggio del testo e quindi essendo motivato a capire si metterà a imparare. Mentre invece se per esempio il contenuto appunto non gli piace, alla fine tende a staccarsi, e soprattutto vedono l'insegnamento delle lingue come un'imposizione. Cioè non si dice allo studente impara questo perché la tua vita migliorerà, ma le lingue vengono considerate come un'altra materia scolastica. Invece imparare una lingua è acquisire un'abilità, è essere in grado di usare qualcosa in un contesto generale, nel mondo in generale, non è una materia. Sì, viene considerato come un'altra materia da insegnare, ma il problema più grave è proprio questo, che in realtà le lingue non sono un'altra materia come la storia. La storia si insegna, le lingue si imparano. La storia si studia, le lingue si imparano, sono due concetti leggermente differenti, e secondo me fa una bella differenza.